Toy Story villains are one of the most interesting group of characters that Pixar has ever produced, and their qualities are something quite different from what we normally are used to, that sets the tone of the studio having antagonists rather than straight up villains. And I know you're probably confused by what I mean by that, since they usually go hand in hand being one and the same, and I've covered that personally, but I think this also makes logical sense, because these are characters who are mostly made to be good, fun companions of their owners, except for the human Sid, as toys searching for the meaning that they were meant for. It's a true example of what love can or cannot do and bring to those who have or haven't had it. Where with this knowledge, I wanted to attempt and do something slightly different for a character-focused video, talking in a franchise that consists of the same crew with newer additions that straighten the bonds of what their purpose is supposed to be, to compare why these foes are evidently supposed to be good-natured but were never given such a chance or even decided not to. But of course, to mainly focus on Lotso Bear as the best villain this franchise has produced, who equally had that chance to be like his predecessors or successors as antagonists but chose to be a villain. One who took things way too far, becoming an evil monster despite being a lovely huggable toy, which is what we should still all praise, having people who can take the third film to another level of the best it could be with such characters, surpassing its original or even its successor in every way. I mean, nothing ever beats the fact that he smells like strawberries, gripping you with his warmth, but turning out to be one of the worst individuals that Pixar has ever produced. A situation where instead of normally having a toy redeem themselves to be the best that they could be, he just really decides not to, valuing his selfish ideals he never got rid of despite being designed as that lovable as can be to his fellow toys or his human owners. And this all ties back into the idea of what the 3 represents. Within a film that is supposed to be the last part of a trilogy, the height of where things can be within a journey you started from its humble beginning, tying back all the things you learned. The idea that you grow and build your relationships with friends and family, wondering where it officially ends up when you tie it all together, about having Woody reflect on his own nature as a toy, where he could potentially end up being if he were able to give in to his selfish attitude overall, realizing the consequences of his own actions. This isn't to say he experiences the same pain as toys like Lotso do within their past, but how their purpose can be corrupted, giving into hatred rather than love that was never there. So in this part, before we talk about Lotso himself, I want to focus on the other villains I've already talked about before and the ultimate outcomes of their fates. Starting off with Sid, we begin with the human because our main goal is the uneasy relationship between Buzz and Woody, trying to discover what a toy's purpose is and being jealous of another's nature within their own. The entire theme of what Toy Story brings to its characters is demonstrated within these two, and Sid mostly exists to show what happens to owners who don't love their toys but use them, reveling in the potential creations that are messed up. Of course, not the best type of villain for these characters, but one that brings them closer to caring about the wrong ideas they had about each other and teaching how valuable friendship and love is when they exact vengeance on that very bully who screams a fear of toys soon after and promises never to hurt them again, where he ends up redeemed like a regular adult who picks up garbage as seen in Toy Story 3, funnily enough. Well, we don't exactly know if he, redeems himself since he appeared like that in the background, but how he just leaves it as is because he moved on with his life after the trauma experience trying to harm a toy ever again. Nothing really grand as we focus on Buzz and Woody until Toy Story 2 introduced the type of villain that they were searching for this whole time, making the image we all know today with Stinky Pete. And now you're introducing a group of characters that seem nice on the surface, with Jesse and Bullseye accepting him in, with an unplayed toy still stuck in his box ready to be opened at any moment, or how nobody cared enough to even try now, content with the world of museums. The first of its type introducing a good-hearted individual who works hard enough to convince Woody to join in for the sake of rewarding his own life, with the other new characters like Jesse exploring the past trauma being forgotten by owner, never wanting that to happen again because what they loved just abandoned them like that after they learn to grow up, an influencing opinion that justifies what he does later by forcing them all to go to Japan, that our darkest traits come out of lack of love or anything that defeats the purpose of being a toy. Rejection does influence a person to act out of spite in negative ways, and forcing others like Woody to join him is very understandable. Not good, but you still get the perspective. Compared to Sid, it's a better way to teach a toy the consequences of what happens when toys are left unloved, but how we realized the purpose is to stick by them in order to help them grow as humans in the world. His attitude is wrong and unjustifiable to keeping them here, but you can't fully blame him for thinking this way, if he has yet to even seen it, as demonstrated by his own defeat where he gets sent to a new owner. One that shows us the new meaning of playtime, where he gets to experience that, and how it said off screen he started to enjoy that lifestyle of what he really wanted in the first place. Another redemption that shows us in the course of Toy Story that its characters can learn, not limited to its hero, but also applicable to its main villain, or antagonist rather, that shows you don't have to straight up defeat them. Well, mostly, as we're about to find out. Of course, this doesn't end before Stinky Pete cleverly leaves out the entire end plot of Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 2, showing us a perfect plan they had in store, saying they will all rot in the landfill.
Idiots! Children destroy toys! You'll all be ruined! Forgotten! Spending eternity rotting in some landfill!
With the consequence of realizing that all kids will still grow up in the fear Woody and the gang will have to face, but accept it for what it is now as long as they get their own purpose fulfilled. But alas, before I turn my attention to Lotso and Toy Story 3, let's skip ahead and revisit Toy Story 4, since Gabby Gabby shares the qualities of what Stinky Pete was, but also not being a villainous individual. What she wants is very simple, to just be loved by an owner for the first time, and only acts a little desperate and antagonistic with her men to ensure that it can happen. A great character for this epilogue series of films that still acts out of the toy desire and greater purpose realization. Events that show us she's a good-hearted character after she gets rejected by Harmony, but how Woody over the course of his life knows that there is more than just one kid that needs help, even if the ones you love grow up without you, trying to bring them to his current owner, but turning that into someone else's attention who needed it the most in her darkest moment, volunteering to help this kid, which in turn helped her find her parents back. A worthwhile reformation for someone who clearly didn't mean harm in any way and justifies the actions of the franchise's past. So the entire point of showing and relaying you this information is to stress how different Lotso chooses to be to create his own path from the other characters. All of these foes, no matter how different they can be, like Sid that is incomparable to the toys and the others' wants and needs, get some sort of reformation or redemption to not harm anymore and rather gain the feelings that were missing, that they were able to grow as characters from their initial lacking lifestyle. And what makes Toy Story unique was the ability to redeem unlikable foes on the inside of their heart of both hero and villain. But now how the most huggable and friendly looking toy, Bear, who smells like strawberries, proves all of those statements wrong. It's a genius of Toy Story overall to show you this when Sid wears a black t-shirt of a skull and looks like your typical child bully mutilating toys, but actually does better in life, and then having Lotso actually come as the true evil who rejects such ideas. A character who also was supposed to be a part of the original Toy Story, but didn't have the technology to make that fur quite yet. And of course, for the fact that Toy Story 3 succeeded the way it did because of a character like Lotso. A life that began similar to the other characters like Jessie herself, who felt abandoned when he was just a Christmas present for this girl named Daisy, living a good life alongside other toys like Big Baby and Chuckles. His nature is a presence of warmth to a child, meant to be happy within the nature of the full name being Lotso Huggin' Bear, because he's meant to give lots of hugs with the eternal smile that brings great love knowing that he does care. But of course, like all fateful villainous toys, this love soon becomes lost when they all went for a picnic. The child Daisy falling asleep, but her parents neglecting the toys in the process when they drive her back home. But how he never gave up even despite these facts, leading them on trying to find their way back to the house before the reveal of a new Lotso replacement, reminding us, like in the previous films, how expendable toys are in the endless supply chain, where sadness turns right into anger, refusing to accept any other definition the toys might say, leading them to Sunnyside Daycare as a result. A bitter beginning where you notice how somewhat similar it is to Jessie's backstory, but not quite enough. It's not completely the same by any means, but it still is a flashback sequence with the same kind of colors and mood of how things evoke a familiar feeling to demonstrate its point. Emily grew up over time, where Jessie was more put on a back burner, feeling abandoned until she officially moved on, putting her in a box that she fears, that also convinced Woody to stay with them, not to experience that. And how Lotso himself suffered the fate of being left behind, but with two other toys. And instead of Emily growing up, Daisy just took a nap, and the blame was more completely on her parents, who forgot about those such toys that they gave to her. In turn, their apology was of course giving her another Lotso in his place, which made him upset, dragging the other two alongside him as well. His feeble mind just couldn't accept the definition that he could be replaceable, or know it was just a misunderstanding that Daisy Daisy still loved him and the blame was still on her parents. Something that showcases the greater divergence between the such initial similarities to other toy characters and how you can change the perception that wasn't their fault or motivated by the owner themselves in a certain stage in life. However, it still remains in line with the rest of the villains being affected by certain events that make them bitter to this point, added within the similar nature of its own heroes at the same time.
And, Woody could have been in that same situation. He could have gotten lost and come back and found a new Woody. And, we like to think that Lotso and Woody are very alike in a lot of ways, but at this moment, Lotso makes a bad choice. He lies to Big Baby and chuckles and claims that Daisy replaced all of them, and he goes down the wrong path, and it's a dark path. And we had him do that specifically because at the end of the film, when Lotso decides not to help the guys and not push the button and stop the conveyor belt, there were a lot of people in early screenings who didn't like that. They thought that Lotso should redeem himself and should save them.
And he was too sympathetic, and a lot of people really felt sorry for him.
Well, they felt sorry for him because, poor guy, he got replaced. But we addressed that note by having him tell more of a blatant lie at that moment and rip Big Baby's pendant off of him and act in a very selfish way.
Of course, like Jesse, this backstory was found by Woody later in the film, but also puts in perspective more in line with Stinky Pete to gradually reveal their own true nature. Like, of course you have to show him like this since he looks so huggable and smells like strawberries, where it puts him as the justifiable villain in a position as the leader of the toys of Sunnyside Daycare. Everything from his warmth grandfather voice to his colorful attitude accepting the toys makes us accept him for who he could be, not just as a villain, but of course this leader of the daycare. Because putting him here does make him very predictable to who he is as the main antagonist, but how it's done in an understandable perspective of how toys normally act when things don't go their preferable way. If you remember, Woody is the leader of the gang in the first place, where he tossles with the fact that everyone likes his new buzz and he loses his grip on being loved, fearing he loses power with the feelings of selfishness a bit on his part, with now being introduced to the leader of this daycare who promises certain things to the new toys. Again, coming from the perspective that all other toys come against Woody, or once he felt himself of the kids are going to grow up. They won't care about him or anything else. So instead, we have a daycare with an endless supply of kids until they close or whatever happens to the world. That he tries to relate to the feelings of abandonment when we know on both sides that that was not the true case of their own situation, assigning them to younger caterpillar room to experience the roughness of toddlers. Where now you can kinda see how bad he is as a character without having him involved, since we get a picture of how terrible it is to be played by these kids, which doesn't feel exciting but feels completely awful. Yet, Lotso likes to keep up this friendly facade when Buzz gets captured and interrogated for being there when he shouldn't, appearing as if he never knew this was going on behind his back when Ken and the other gang was there, but willingly helping him back out to send him to the nice butterfly room, the catch of course being only him available for that trade rather than the entire gang, which he does not like, strapping him once again, finding him more useful to serve his own purpose. A reset that puts him as an enforcer to the rest of the gang to stay in the caterpillar room because they need toys over there rather than the butterfly room where all the nice kids hang out. A twist that comes earlier than most other villains that really sets him apart from the other Toy Story antagonists. One who puts a friendly facade but in reality has a terrifying grip over the daycare to exact his own agenda, which is nothing you can say the others have at all. Yes, Pete and Gabby lack being played with, but they don't go to lengths to subject all toys to this will. Sure, we saw bits and pieces that relate to others like forcing Woody to move to Japan, Sid having a collection of toys under his inventive grip, and Gabby Gabby having lackeys, but they don't stoop to his level of complete control, tyranny, and dictatorship of an entire daycare. Like, you can see it right before he turns Buzz, how his attitude turns malicious against him, and how other toys embodying his house describe him as a true monster that draws in the fact that he's really a villain rather than normal Toy Story antagonist. Where Sunnyside is the prison of the toys, and he is the tyrannical warden setting down strict rules that they have to follow each day unless they disagree, putting them in sandboxes while he lives comfortably with whomever he chooses to be a part of that very system. Justified in how he feels still upset with Daisy, thinking if I experience pain, then so should they. And he doesn't even care about what they feel. His attitude becomes similar in expression to a typical Disney villain, tossing Woody's hat aside he lost earlier that day as a supposed threat of what happens when toys get out of line, instilling fear by any means necessary, thinking that Woody might have got killed. Stuff that are in turn references to other live action characters, including the one Lotso's voice actor Ned Beatty played back in the 70s, such as Sheriff J.C. Connors from films like White Lightning, or even Strother Martin's character from Cool Hand Luke, who was the very warden of that very film called The Captain, where if you do watch it, you really do get where they got the personality or methodical traits that Lotso does have that makes him an effective villain, because they do in fact put their bases on corrupt people. The reality where he doesn't care about toys other than himself, which is again nothing the others even ever expressed. They cared clearly about wanting to be played with, but they never maliciously wanted to harm, unlike Sid, who just thought they were toys like they normally should be when they hide from us. Of course, like most, he does disappear for the majority part of the film towards the end, where you could see more of what he affects as a leader in the daycare, enforcing to the point of being a prison where toys go out and patrol the playground outside of the daycare, or inside with flashing lights or television cameras, or toy trucks making Buzz hardwired to be a no-nonsense brutal guard who still yet thinks he's a real space ranger. He keeps everyone inside as long as it satisfies him, and it truly makes him more dangerous than you can even think of, especially when he stops them dead in their tracks by the trash can, knowing of their escape plan they've made by breaking the toy that helped Woody in the first place, which is something I forgot to mention as another trait of Lotso, breaking toys that don't manage to conform or tell him what he wants to hear. But this sequence is laid out for us to learn how uncaring he is, pointing out the pointless nature of toys waiting to be thrown away at the very end, like he intends to our crew being by a trash can waiting for its pickup.
You're a piece of plastic. You were made to be thrown away.
And because of this, I think there's nothing more frightening than a toy that has such nihilistic views, opening up room for them to do as they please to others, convincing them that older kids grow up to not care anymore. Nothing even matters because all kids do not care about toys once they're an adult. That his previous owner never even loved toys like Big Baby because of his own personal grievance being replaced. It's something his cronies start to notice, being reluctant to even help him afterwards when others like Ken switch sides over the fact that he is the one who put himself top of a pyramid scheme when everyone else deserved a chance. That Sunnyside could have been the haven it was meant to be perceived as if it weren't for his own actions making others feel bad as if they crossed his line. Actions that prompt Big Baby to rebel over his former friend over the truth, since he still harbors his love for Daisy compared to Lotso, who thinks otherwise, breaking his heart that has his name on it, which enraged him to throw him away like trash just soon after he just said what toys were earlier.
We're all just trash, waiting to be thrown away. That's all a toy is.
But how he's not willing to go without a fight, grabbing Woody down below and the other toys soon as a result. Yet, despite his villainous nature, the toys do make an effort to save him alongside working together to get out of such a landfill. That, as we all know, these guys do not like to leave anyone behind, knowing the chance they can get to be better like all the others have shown in the past or its present. But this was just never meant to be when they helped him pick him back up to the near stop button, only to find his traitorous evil persona return yet again, smiling at their predicament, proclaiming, "Where is Andy now to help them out?"
Where's your kid now, Sheriff?
This seals the deal on his character that completely differentiates from all the others, making him unredeemable in a franchise that was made on its redeemability, that despite all that they can to show that they can help him realize the truth, he hardly accepts the opportunity to show for it, like his kid apparently did for the sake of proving a point. That they made a point in his appearance that was supposedly cuddly on the outside, but completely bitter and hateful on the inside, to contrast who deserves to be saved or not. These decisions were also done to make you care about the toys who journeyed from the first film fearing if this is the end of their lives in the incinerator, when test audiences wanted to see him redeemed like the rest of the bunch to push the button. But how that couldn't be, because it becomes more effective if you feared like this was in fact the end, and that everything he's done to all the other toys at the daycare, reminding you that he did take things further than all of the other toys combined.
You know, if we've done our job well as storytellers, I think that I think people are fully expecting that Lotso's going to push this button. At least I hope that's what we want people to believe. We want people to believe that, against all odds, Lotso manages to get up to that button and he's going to save these guys as thanks for saving him. He's doing the right thing.
I think it works because we want him to.
Yeah, we really want him to. We're rooting for it. And of course, when he gets up to the top, he doesn't push the button. I hope that the audience feels at that moment, oh my God, what can possibly happen now? How are they possibly going to get out of this situation? Yet a second later, they go tumbling back into the to the incinerator. I mean, we wanted this to just seem completely impossible. We designed this whole area here at the end, the vortex of trash, to be inescapable.
That he really could have chosen to do so, but just chose not to because he doesn't want to lose what he personally built over the years of grief, losing Daisy that weren't her own fault or anyone else's for that matter. These audiences also say this because they sympathize with his backstory of who he was and how Chuckles did describe he was a good friend, sympathizing greatly with him even if he didn't deserve such sympathy for everything else he did. Yet it really doesn't matter when they still make it their job to ensure he doesn't get away clean in this film, traversing a landfill until a garbage man picks him up, knowing he too had one as a child. A perfect fate apparently, where despite being found, he is also lost to becoming an ornament on the front grille of the truck with the rest of these other toys, condemned to a fate of swallowing flies on the road on the one thing he says that toys are inevitably waiting for in a garbage truck, with nothing left to do but to close his mouth to protect it, strapped like a slave of his own making, instead of freely roaming to rule Sunnyside Daycare like he thought he could just do. And as a result, the daycare is a better place without him for toys who both switch sides between Caterpillar and Butterfly Room, and they all get to live happily ever after, with of course Bonnie helping the rest of the original gang out since Woody deemed it not worth it to chase after Lotso after all, not holding vengeance in their hearts like he had done to do better, reminding us that they tried to save him and tried to do their best because that's who they are, remembering the entire journey he himself took with Buzz and Jessie, learning it's better to value others and being there for your kid no matter the cost. So when we look back on Toy Story, we look back on a group of characters like Lotso who managed to take things farther than any other toy despite having a lovable exterior, an interesting case in the franchise that was made for antagonistic characters rather than straight up villains as we come to know at the start of this video, a monster who decided not to redeem himself what could have been despite having every chance to prove himself otherwise with the crew as they have done time and time again, but how that was just never meant to be, and why we should look back fondly on Toy Story 3 as the satisfying conclusion to its original trilogy arc, combining all the good and all the bad traits of its own characters, and having such reasons why Lotso will always remain to be at the top tier of Pixar and even Disney villains overall. Deceived by a sweet smell of strawberry that shows us such despicable evil that you should never forgive. But with all of that said, I'm going to smell some strawberries. I'm all done. Goodbye.